When you think of poverty, you likely picture rundown inner-city neighborhoods, homeless people in city parks, worn-out apartment buildings, or long lines for unemployment benefits. This is the cliché many have in their minds. However, poverty today is actually growing much faster in America's suburbs than its cities. This goes against the common perception many have. From 1990 to 2014, overall poverty rose 50% across the country, but surprisingly, the number of poor people doubled in the suburbs, while cities only saw a slight increase.
A new study shows poverty is growing fastest in the suburbs.
So why are suburban neighborhoods with nice homes, kids playing outside, and shopping malls seeing huge jumps in poverty that exceed cities? In this video, we'll look at the reasons suburban poverty is on the rise, why it remains unseen, and what can help these struggling communities. Around 200 million Americans live in the suburbs, more than cities or rural areas. With swiftly climbing poverty, these bedroom communities may soon face a harsh reality. Are the suburbs ready to tackle this problem head-on? Just how swift has the rate of poverty grown in suburbs compared to cities? The statistics reveal the scale of this crisis. According to research from the University of Washington, the percentage of census tracts classified as high poverty rose twice as rapidly in the suburbs versus urban areas from 1990 to 2014. That's a staggering difference. Specifically, the suburban poverty rate jumped from 8% of tracts to over 12% by 2014. Meanwhile, the urban poverty rate grew just 2 percentage points from 18 to 20% of tracts during the 24 years. Additionally, the actual number of people living below the poverty line skyrocketed in the suburbs. There was a doubling of poor suburbanites from 1990 to 2014. That's an entire generation living in mounting economic hardship outside the cities. But here's maybe the most disturbing data point. Over the last decade, the suburbs have apparently hit a tipping point with poverty increasing faster than before. This indicates the crisis is accelerating at this very moment. The scale of surging suburban poverty is clear from the figures. But what's behind these trends? Why are the manicured lawns, shiny shopping centers, and comfortable communities falling into economic distress faster than across American cities? There are a few fundamental misconceptions we need to explore first about the true nature of suburban poverty. When you first hear about suburban poverty rising faster than cities, you may wonder, why? A common reaction is that poor residents must be moving from inner cities out to the suburbs. But that is a misconception. Research shows that surging suburban poverty is not a result of urban poor migrating to the outskirts of cities. Rather, the major factor is that poverty is growing rapidly from within suburban communities themselves. Many suburban towns have experienced economic shifts underlying this expansion of hardship. Factors like jobs moving overseas, the housing crisis, and an overall decline in wages have hit close to home. Another myth is that poverty is only suddenly hitting minorities in the suburbs. While rates have grown higher among African Americans and Latinos, poverty has also increased substantially for suburban whites. In the common public image, poverty often focuses on single minority mothers in inner cities, but the data shows single-parent families struggling in the suburbs at similar rates as urban centers. Poverty today has more faces and locations than the typical stereotypes suggest. The truth is that economic hardship in suburbs is homegrown, not imported, and it impacts a diversity of families across ethnicities and geographic boundaries. This context helps clarify the reality behind the climbing rate of suburban poverty. But what other factors are contributing to more extreme increases than in tandem cities? What money issues led to more poverty growth in suburbs versus cities? Several economic changes hit suburban areas especially hard. First, job losses soared while lower-paying work increased outside cities. Suburbs with the most poverty saw declines in good jobs and rises in low-wage service gigs. Second, the housing crisis sparked a flood of foreclosures and failed development in overbuilt suburbs. As demand dropped, half-finished neighborhoods were abandoned with for sale signs in empty cul-de-sacs. Third, well-off residents moved away taking tax money with them. Home values fell without buyers. Local businesses closed lacking customers. Less tax revenue meant cities couldn't fund help programs. Finally, state and federal funding cuts landed harder on suburbs than cities. This made the impacts of growing poverty even worse. In short, economic instability drained thriving suburbs like Levittown post-2000, but social troubles would also test these commuter towns. With more poverty, suburbs now deal with social issues once mainly in cities. First, limited transportation prevents accessing help. Food pantries, job centers, and aid programs are scarce outside cities. No car makes reaching them hard across spread-out suburbs. Second, declining community unity reduces upward mobility. As poverty rose, participation in youth groups, neighborhood events, and community organizations fell 50% per research. Fewer social ties means less career mentors, childcare help, crisis aid, and more for low-income residents. Rich residents become less invested in assisting the poor over time too. Third, homelessness and poverty seem more shocking in tidy suburbs versus cities. This lowers willingness to pay for safety net services through taxes. While suburban infrastructure still looks fine, poverty has weakened the social foundations that support economic mobility. Government and news media have also ignored the poverty crisis growing quickly in suburbs versus cities. First, federal and state dollars for food, housing, and other aid go mostly to cities, not suburbs with faster rising hardship. Second, officials devote fewer resources to suburban poverty issues. State budgets provide more money to city departments for housing, job, transport, and counseling programs. Third, major advocacy groups like Habitat for Humanity focus initiatives on urban shelter shortages more than suburban housing needs. Finally, news stories highlight poverty in big cities over suburban towns. Public outrage on Los Angeles homelessness gets covered more than food bank gaps in Akron. This shapes false public views. In short, despite faster suburban poverty, policy responses and media attention remain skewed toward urban zones. Targeted solutions are essential to match the real data. Though suburbs may still appear prosperous, a quiet economic crisis has been brewing for years. The reality, financial hardship has been rising rapidly within suburban communities, but it often stays hidden from view. Outwardly, neat homes and kids playing dominates. Bustling shopping centers continue on main streets. SUVs roll down wide suburban roads. So few realize the pleasant neighborhood nearby likely faces surging poverty. The common public image of hardship rarely matches the truth around the corner. With little public knowledge, well-funded policies, or targeted solutions, struggling suburban families feel left behind. This fuels a downward spiral of disappearing jobs, social ties, services, and upward mobility. An entire generation of children now face economic instability, once rarely seen outside cities. With over half of Americans in suburbs, this hidden trend may soon engulf whole regions. The poverty crisis next door must come out of the shadows. But once acknowledged, communities can join together to renew prosperity for their neighbors in need. America can no longer ignore the poverty growing quickly in suburbs. As shown, financial hardship outside cities has increased far more over 30 years. But public views lag behind this troubling truth, whether due to false beliefs, insufficient advocacy, or uneven policies. The needs of the surging suburban poor stay unmet. With poverty doubling in communities built around home ownership and education, targeted solutions are now required. Fortunately, when awakened to hidden crises, Americans unite to face them. By lifting up struggling suburban families together, we can restore economic mobility for the next generation. The data confirms suburban poverty is expanding faster than nearly anywhere today.
According to national research, poverty is growing in the nation's suburbs faster than anywhere else.
The question is no longer whether this is real. Now we must ask ourselves, are we ready to build an equitable path forward for suburbs gripped by hardship? The solutions begin by hearing every voice and empowering every family toward renewed, shared prosperity.